It's Nicole today. I am so pleased to be joined by my friend Steve Swartz. He runs the blog and the podcast and the YouTube channel for LSAT Unplugged. And today we're going to be doing a little bit of a collab where he interviews me about my journey going to law school. So stick around for both of the videos and we'll hop right into it.
It's kind of funny. So, as you may know, I do a lot with YouTube on LSAT stuff, and I was searching YouTube, and then I came across some of your videos describing your LSAT journey, and then giving some tips for those studying. And then, as we talked a little bit, I realized that you would actually use my website back when you were studying, and so I
I
thought, wow,
did.
I've got to have you on here to hear more about your journey.
Yeah, and I was so excited when I saw your comment on my very first video I'd ever posted on how I got 169 on the LSAT. I studied for about 3 to 5 months. It was a little fuzzy because it was like 2 months where I did no studying at all. But I was reading your blog and your tips really helped me out. Thank you so much for providing that free resource for those of us who can't afford actual personal coaching. I really found it so helpful.
Of course, no, I'm so glad that it helped. And it's funny because so many people buy my stuff or they use my site, and I never actually get to meet them or interact with them. And so
Yeah.
this is pretty cool. I'm wondering, what about my site did you find most helpful, or what resources did you use more than others?
Sure. So I feel like I did a lot of research on what is the LSAT, what is it going to be testing, how is it going to test those things. I feel like I need the why before I actually start studying the what. That's just kind of the person that I am. And so your site particular, I think, explained that to me in an accessible way that I could understand. I felt like, okay, I know that this type of question is testing this way of thinking. I know that this particular type of logic game is something that is learnable. I feel like it just motivated me and made me feel like, oh, this is something I actually can do, even though my original diagnostic score was not something I was pleased with.
And you approved 11 points, right?
I did improve 11 points by test day. Yeah.
And so that was from I guess a 158 to a 169.
That's correct. Yeah, some of my practice tests, I actually was scoring a little bit higher into like 170, 171, but 169 on the actual big day was a pretty big deal to me. I was really excited about it, especially since there were so many ways where I felt like when I took the test, oh, I could have done that better, or oh, I should have known that, or that took me too long. So to get that score to me was a testament of, oh, the hard work I put in actually made a difference.
And it does, it pays off because now you're looking at a top 20 school with potentially a full ride. So that's a lot
Yeah.
of money.
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually have been offered several full rides at this point,
Whoa.
one of which is to a top 20 school with a living stipend, several mentorships, guaranteed research assistant position, guaranteed clinic position. It's absolutely like a dream come true, and I never thought I would be here. I remember when I was growing up, my parents would always tease because I always knew I wanted to go into law and justice. They'd say, "Oh, Nicole, you're going to be a judge. You're going to get a full ride to law school." And I was like, nobody gets full rides to law school. What is that? And so now to be in this position, knowing and living this testament of this is very learnable, it's very doable. It doesn't matter how far out there it seems. If you put the work in, results are going to happen.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's just you're describing what's the dream for so
I
many future
know.
law students. I'm wondering, so what would you say is the biggest insight that you got from your LSAT prep or the law school admission process that got you to where you are now with so many options before you?
Hmm. Yeah. The biggest insight for me was probably just that I didn't need to necessarily have 20 internships, in a district attorney's office. I didn't need a bunch of letters of recommendation from judges and senators. I didn't need to have published 20-page papers in respected journals or to get a 180 or all that to get a full ride and to be financially stable going into law school, which is an insane sentence to be able to say. It's something that anybody can do. I grew up with very supportive family, but unfortunately, no one in my family or a close circle of friends went to law school, had any kind of idea what that process looked like. So for me, I was going in totally blind. Everything I did, I had to learn by myself. Google was my best friend. And that's why stuff like your blog was really helpful to me, because it assured me that it's okay that you don't totally know what you're doing. It's okay that you don't have all of the resources or application materials that you wish you had. You can just be yourself, study hard, work hard, and put yourself out there, and that's going to be enough to get you where you want to be. Which I feel like is such a cliche thing to say, is like that American dream, you know, like put yourself up by bootstraps. But like really the law school process is that, like, if you work, and obviously I've had it much easier than many with a supportive family, with a great education. Um, but I didn't have everything that I thought I needed, but I still got to where I wanted to be.
Well, it sounds like you really illustrated one of my favorite themes, which is this idea of action over perfection. You don't want the
Mhm.
perfect to be the enemy of the good. You don't need to necessarily know everything or have every resource out there. But what you do have, even just free stuff online, like my site,
Yeah.
could be enough. So
Yes.
what was your, you mentioned before you took the LSAT last June, right?
I did take the LSAT last June. Yeah.
So what was your study process like in the weeks or months leading up to that test date? Were you doing a lot of timed exams, using prep tests? What did it look like?
Yeah. So my process, I took a diagnostic test in, I think, early January, just to see where I was at. I'm like, okay, in all realistic life, I'm a busy college student. I have 18 credits. I was presenting a paper at a conference. And so I was like, I don't have all the time in the world to study for this thing, but I want to do a good job. So I started 6 months in advance and ended up studying for about a composite of 3 of those months, scattered throughout those 6. And I used the PowerScore Bibles religiously, no pun intended. I used a bunch of free things. Khan Academy, I was like, this is a blessing from Jesus. Oh my gosh. Like they let me be part of their beta testing. So before it was widely available, I got to use that, and it was amazing. It was basically like having a free LSAT coach online.
Mhm.
And so just using all of that, I started doing timed exams probably a month out. I would try to do about 2 a week. And honestly, with my schedule, sometimes I couldn't get through the whole thing, but I wanted to time as much as possible because I knew that time would be a struggle for me, especially in the reading comprehension section, which surprised me because I've always been like a big reader. When I took the SAT or the ACT, that was like the breeze section for me. I never worried about it. But for the LSAT, because it's such dense reading material, I needed to practice timing it out of like, okay, after like 3 minutes, you need to be done with this passage and moving on. So I would sometimes just time individual sections or halves of sections, anything I could do to get myself used to test conditions as close as I could, was really a priority for me.
And that's so important, trying to really replicate the actual test day experience, not just doing it in isolation and certainly not just doing 4 individual sections, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. Something I saw on another blog, I wish I could remember where it was and I would direct people over to it, but I looked at probably like 200 different sites, so lost track of a couple of them. But one of them had this method of even factoring in that, like, that test.
Experimental, right?
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The experimental section. And it was like, do another section, it's going to be experimental, but then average out like the scores of that one and the other two and like factor it in. So basically it would affect, even though you knew that one was going to be your experimental, it would still affect your actual score. So it would make you motivated to put just as much effort into it. And so stuff like that, I think, really helped me simulate test conditions as close as possible. I would just like claim a library desk in my city for like 5 hours and not move and just like guard it very, protectively. Like, this is my spot. I have to figure out this test because I'm taking it next week and I need to do a good job.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely want to do that. And by the way, that experimental thing, that's something that I'm sure a lot of people talk about. And
Mhm.
I'll just real quick lay it out for people how to do that because I mentioned that in my study plans too. let's say you've got exams 83, 84, 85, and 86 you want to do timed. You just take exam 82, cut it into 4 parts, and insert each one of those 4 parts into 83, 84, 85, 86. Then later, you can tally your results from 82, in case anyone's just looking for the specifics on that. But
Yeah,
aside from the LSAT, I want to get into some of this other stuff too with you in terms of your law school admissions. What about your personal statement, letters of rec? Is there anything on that side of things that you thought was especially strong or compelling for your application?
definitely. So, as probably people know, you can't read your letters of recommendation, which is kind of a bummer because I'm a big words of affirmation person. Like, all I want to do is read people say nice things about me. But I had a really great professor in college, one of my communication professors, so I knew he could probably figure out how to form a nice sentence. And he wrote a letter for me. I also got letters. Um, I found out that right before I applied to law schools that I actually could intern for the district attorney near in my county, and that was a really great experience. A couple of those attorneys were willing to write letters for me. Um, Something that they told me that I didn't end up doing, but I thought was interesting advice and might be helpful to somebody else, is a lot of people just don't have the time to write you a letter of rec, but they're very willing to help you get into law school. So what you can do, which sounds super awkward to me, is write your own letter of recommendation, send it to them, they'll approve it and sign it for you. Then you know what it says, and the law school thinks like you're great. Um, as far as personal statement goes, I I was really nervous about my personal statement. I read a lot of examples, and it seemed to be like the best ones were, oh, I came from this really tough situation, but my passion for law or my passion for justice helped me get through it. And I have had, thankfully, like a really nice life. I mean, I've gone through like tough things like anybody else, but nothing incredibly life changing or life threatening or anything like that. I've gone straight from high school to college and now to law school. So writing that statement, I was like, there is nothing special about me as far as the statement goes. And so what I ended up talking about was how my faith impacted my interpretation of what justice looks like. And even though I don't believe that an ideal justice system is something that's attainable right now with how broken the world is, that doesn't mean that it isn't worth striving for or seeking after. And I actually got a couple comments from people in different admissions offices, regardless of their response to my actual application, saying, I really appreciated your personal statement. It was really genuine. Thank you for writing about something that mattered to you. And writing that statement, I was very aware that people weren't going to agree with everything I was saying. I'm very aware, not every single person in law school is Christian, and not every person at admissions office is religious. But for me, that's something that's a huge part of my identity, and I didn't want to put my application out there in a dishonest way that was going to leave out such an important aspect of my life. So it was pretty cool to see that validated by people in an admissions office who recognized, hey, you put yourself out there, we see that's important to you, and that's what we're looking for in somebody who comes to our law school, is someone who's authentic and genuine and honest about what they believe and why they believe it.
Well, that's really interesting. And it kind of jives with what I hear from admission officers, that they aren't going to let their personal biases get in the way. I mean, of course, we all know that like academia isn't the most like religious or devout space,
Right.
right? But admission officers actually appreciate the honesty and authenticity, as well as a wide variety of like backgrounds, including like intellectual or faith related diversity
Yeah.
as well. That's something unique you can bring to the table. And so even if it might not match the typical profile of the average applicant, that could be a good thing sometimes for them.
Right.
And it sounds
Absolutely.
like it was also a particularly inspirational essay. And so that also is uplifting as well. You don't want it to be just a sob story of all the hardships you've encountered,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely. Another thing too is not just like something I've told some people who've asked me for advice about this is don't just write and pour your heart out and send it to a law school. Like there are a lot of eyes that are willing to look at that to give you constructive feedback. I actually sent my personal statement to 45 people, 20 of which got back to me and said either this is great, thanks for sending it, or they said you need to change the sentence. This sounds really weird. Don't say that. And so by the time I actually sent my personal statement to law schools, it was very much the same in heart, but drastically different in the way that I formed sentences, the way that I structured the statement. And I think that that really made a difference. So believing in the people that have got you where you are now, I think is going to continue to propel you in the law school application process.
Definitely making use of your community, and 45 people. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's way more than most applicants share it with, I think. Some people don't share it with anybody.
Yeah, that's not a good idea. I literally sent it to like high school teachers that I hadn't talked to in 4 years. I was like, hey, remember me? You liked me 4 years ago. Please read this.
No, sure. And people are happy to help. And worst that happens is they don't get back to you or they don't have
Right.
time, and that's fine. But I was talking with one student, she's a Columbia law student, and she was saying that she reached out to alums on LinkedIn
Oh, interesting.
and just asked them, she'd never met these people before, just kind of reached out, made a connection, and then was like, can you read over my essay? And that sort of thing. It works. So even if you don't know 45 people personally, you could still find folks or maybe people online. But yeah, I'm really glad you did that, because I'm sure it strengthened your essay. If 45 people, each person gives you one tip or one edit,
Yep.
that's a big change right there.
Yeah, and a 2-page paper to have 45 different edits is quite a
Uh-huh.
lot. But it really, I think, made it for the better. And that combined with, thankfully, a good LSAT score and a good GPA and letters of recommendation for people who knew my work ethic and had had me in class or had me work for them. All of that combined led to what I think was a pretty solid application, which I would say got me about 75% of the way there in getting scholarship decisions and acceptance decisions from law schools I applied to.
No, it sounds like you had a really compelling application. One thing that you mentioned earlier, I want to dig into a little bit, is the internship at the DA's office.
Yeah.
Because the way you mentioned, you were like, "Oh, I just got this internship at the DA's
Oh, yeah,
office," and
that.
I'm thinking like half the people listening are like, "I want an internship at the DA's office." Like, how did that actually come about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't mean to breeze by it. It was actually a huge deal for me because I had struggled for literally 3 years to find anything law related, paid or not. Like somebody get me in a law office. Like I just want to do something that's actually related to what I'm passionate about. So I found out the year prior from my mom's friend, who's a police officer, that you could intern as even a high school student for at least for Los Angeles County, which is close to where I live, and also San Bernardino County. Um, so what I did was I like looked online. I was like, is this a true thing? Did a little bit of a Google search, and I found like a gigantic application. I was like, well, all right, there goes 3 hours of my night. So I just like literally printed out the whole thing, started writing it down, sent it out in like a giant envelope, and waited to hear back. The first year, it turned out I missed the application deadline because I didn't know about it. So the second year, I sent it in about a month early and did a couple calls, a couple emails following up. I didn't really ever hear back from San Bernardino, so not sure what was going on there. But LA, within like 2 weeks of getting it, said, hey, come out, just do a background check, get your fingerprints done, we'll get an interview going, like all this stuff, boom, boom, boom. And I'm sitting here like, that was it? Like, that's all I got to do. So I ended up going in, got my fingerprint, got a badge, went in for an interview. And the interview process, at least for me, ended up being much more of like, no, literally, like anybody can do this as long as they pass the background check. So you're just here to like meet us and make sure you feel comfortable. Um, I actually ended up interning in Pomona, which, little known fact, is one of the crime capitals of the United States and certainly of California. Um, so there was like drug deals going outside of the courthouse. Attorneys got mugged on the way to their cars. I was like, I am going to die doing this internship. But It ended up being super, super cool. Everyone there was so supportive. I just went in and tried to prove as much as I could that I was dedicated to this position as much as I would have been to a real job. I went 3 days a week, all day long. I said, here I am. Like, I would literally walk around the office and talk to every attorney, like, do you have something I could do? Do you have something I could do? Can I file something for you? Can I, like, I had like a 2,000 page just stack of papers of like medical files that I had to go and just like black out with a crayon. Oh my gosh, it took so long, but it was definitely an awesome experience, and something I didn't even know was an option, or I would have done it way earlier. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, literally just go onto your computer or phone or whatever, type in your county and put in, district attorney internship, or start calling offices. There's a ton of secretaries there who are very willing to direct you to whoever you need to speak to. Not every county is going to offer that, obviously. Some people only want law students, but I was shocked at how great the response was when myself, a junior in college, was just saying, this is something I want to do. And they said, we'll take all the help we can get.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. It sounds like the hardest part of this may have simply been doing the 3-hour application.
Yep, pretty much.
And it's funny too, because I'm here in New York and I've worked with a number of students over the years who had internships at DA's offices. And I happen to be in Brooklyn, but all of the students I worked with, even back when I lived in Manhattan, they all work at the Brooklyn DA's office. So that tells me that maybe Manhattan's hard to get or Queens is
Mm,
hard to get, but there are certain ones that are just more receptive, and
yeah,
you just do the application, they'll have you in there. And maybe you're not doing the most glamorous work at first, but
probably not.
but it sounds like you took some initiative and were able to reach out to the various attorneys there and get some perhaps more substantive work at times.
Yeah, I think it's just not very publicized, but there's a lot of attorneys out there who recognize that there are college students and even high school students who can't work in the legal field because they're not qualified to, having gone to law school or taken any classes. And they say, we know you want to be involved. And it ended up, once I, kind of got my hands dirty a little bit for a couple weeks just doing grunt work, they actually started letting me go in courtrooms. I got to help with jury selection. One judge let me sit up at the desk with the attorney where co-counsel sits, even though you're not supposed to do that. He let me do that, and I got to help out with cross-examinations. I wasn't obviously speaking on the record, but I could write notes to the attorney and be like, oh, this jury looked at you weird when you did that. I don't think that person understood what you were saying. It was incredible what they ended up letting me do once I just proved that I wanted to be there and learn as much as I could.
Very cool. Is criminal law something you're thinking of pursuing, or are you interested in something else?
Yeah, so actually my passion is criminal prosecution. So being in the DA's office was just perfect for me. That's where I'm thinking I'll probably end up after law school, although I'm also looking into opportunities with federal work as AUSAs. All that kind of stuff is where I'm probably headed.
Nice, nice. Your experience in the DA's office? How has that differed from what you might have thought it would be previously, or portrayals on TV? Any movies or TV shows that are similar or different?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I actually did mock trial for 5 years, so I was pretty comfortable in the courtroom, but had a very limited view of what the legal process was because all of my, fake experience was condensed into here's 1 2-hour trial and that's it. I had no idea that jury selection takes an entire day. I didn't know that almost every objection they go back, at least the trials, I was watching, they would go back into judges' chambers for. The jury doesn't get to hear any of that, which is such a bummer because that's like my favorite part about trials is objection battles. But there was just so much paperwork and investigation and transcripting of videos, calls to DMVs, just all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that I don't think is reflected in anything the public really has access to. I watch a lot of TV shows, like crime dramas and stuff. Right now, my favorite show is Bowl. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like a jury scientist thing, which is totally impractical. It's not real at all, but it's still fun to watch. And I still think that there's value in those shows because they humanize, I think, the district attorneys and the defense attorneys, the victims and the defendants, the jury members, the judges. All those people become more real in a sense, I think, than they do just locked up in the courtroom and somebody that you dread seeing either because you got in trouble or because you got a jury summons in the mail. So I still think there's value to TV shows, but they're definitely not reflective of what an actual trial looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Well, that's been very interesting to hear about. Criminal law is one area that I was considering back when I was thinking about law school, and I only know more of the media portrayal. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to hear more
Yeah,
about the behind the scenes.
yeah. I'm hoping actually on my YouTube channel in the coming months to start doing some reactions. I've seen very few lawyers who are willing to do that, but I always find it fascinating. And so, especially because then, in 5 years, I can look back at my own video and be like, no, that's not how that works. Nicole, it'll be good laughing material for myself and probably lots of other people.
No, reactions are always fun. That'll be cool. And so, well, I think we should leave off here, Nicole. But this has been a pleasure, and I think we should definitely do it again sometime.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
will I will link people to your YouTube channel, which I believe is Life as a Law Student, right?
That's right. And then you also can follow me on Instagram at LAA Law Student.
LAA Law Student. Awesome.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, very cool, Nicole. Well, thank you again for joining us, and we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
Of course. Take care.
I'll see you guys next time. God bless.